So anyway, welcome. Chris, it's really good to speak live with you. We've watched each other for a while. I think you do great work, and I'm so glad and pleased and honored to have you here with us. Steve Bassett is someone I've known for only about 1.2 million years since we both started out in this, and this is a really good combination. May I offer a recap of what both of you had to say today? You're both really on point in your own way. And in terms of discussing this as the politics of UFO disclosure, let me see if I can summarize and encapsulate what you were saying, Chris, and what you were saying, Stephen. Both correct me, and let's see where we can move here. You had a few pertinent things to say, Chris, but the thing that stuck out, I think, with myself and with most people, I will bet, were your comments on Michael Herrera, who, of course, was one of Stephen Greer's recent disclosure witnesses from about a year ago. He had a lot to say about his experience in Indonesia. Deep black budget criminal, scary guys. And when you were leaving, I did ask you if you could think about your take on who these guys are. I mean, I firmly believe, this is my opinion, a large number of these craft are not operated by human beings, but I do believe some are. Stephen Greer, who brought Herrera out when he did, I think is very strongly of the opinion, it seems to me, that there's a lot of human black budget activity going on here. And I don't disagree with that. I just wonder how much, what's the actual percentage. So if these guys are not ET, then, and they're human, presumably beyond special access programs, is that the impression that he gave you? What
it seemed like
you have any sense of who they are and what they're about? Yeah.
I did ask, and he said it was established back in 1947, right, with the National Securities Act. And so it was in the guys, he said the insiders he's working with, their group was formed back then and focused on crash retrievals. So that was their main focus.
That would indicate a U.S. government connection, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So I think they do have, he said they're mainly recruited from the military, Michael Herrera said. And so it's basically, I understood it was contractor. When I tried to pin him down on specifics, he said it basically it's not his place to release the information. So yeah, but I understand that they're contractors that maybe came from the government or worked with the government, and
yeah,
and he also said that they got their money through embezzlement. The source revealed that.
Yeah, this is the dark shit that I have been looking at for 20 plus years. This is why I have such a jaded view of the United States, simply because this cover-up is not just a cover-up of truth. It seems like a criminal enterprise. And this is where I keep wondering, like, you get into the nub of disclosure, and Stephen, you really need to jump in here. We're on a process where we have members of Congress, Burchett, Burleson, others. They seem like legitimately interested in pushing this forward. And I think they're going to do it. Do they have more whistleblowers? Everyone says yes. I mean, I've got to think it's true. So if this actually goes out, I keep thinking the biggest fear, if I'm one of those guys, the secrecy group, as Donald Kehoe always called them, I got to be thinking, like, I know where the bodies are buried, sometimes literally. And don't you think that there is absolute terror by certain parties who have access to this secrecy, that they will just do anything possible to mitigate or eliminate their liability? I mean, how does that factor into this? If you've got a group that is so terrifying that people like David Grush explicitly have said have killed people and probably are wreaking terror below the surface of this reality, I just keep wondering how that is going to factor into it. And I just wonder, Stephen, if you have a thought about that. I'm going to throw that out to you.
I have a lot of thoughts. To start with Grush. Grush said that people have been killed. He didn't say when.
Right. And he also didn't explicitly differentiate where they killed as a result of their interaction with this phenomenon, which we do know has very negative health effects. I mean, just look at someone like John Burroughs. But then he did also actually state, it seemed to me, that it was both the phenomenon and, the black budget shenanigans. Didn't he say both? That's what I thought.
Let me see if I can put a context on this. The truth embargo is 76 years on. That's 3 generations of people. And it's gone through many phases. It was classified from the beginning. And so we can assume, and this is content for the film industry. Hello, give me a call. We can assume that all manner of various programs, projects took place as part of the engagement of this phenomena and the issue by the government. And they were careful, they were shielded by secrecy, very well kept secrecy. And some of these programs were probably perfectly appropriate and some were not. So there's a very complex history here. And we don't, obviously, the truth embargo prevents us from having a proper analysis of it and dissecting it down. In other words, doing the documentary that Burns did on the Civil War. We're a long ways from that documentary. And so it's messy. And so we get a little picture here and a glimpse here and whatever. I think the best way I can describe the situation now is this, is that there is some resistance, I'm sure, within elements of the government to the process underway, but essentially it will not succeed. And probably they even know that. There is little evidence of it. Now, there are things that are happening that people are looking at, and anything that seems to point towards resistance or jumping on it and calling it resistance, when in fact it probably is not. And let me give you a perfect example of that. When Grush came forward, it caused a great deal of trouble. Not because Grush is a bad guy, but because it was not in the script yet. In other words, it was like for way towards the end of Act 3, and it's Act 2, and here he comes out and he's got the dialogue for Act 3. So it's a problem, really a problem. And it caused difficulties. It triggered a hearing in the House.
Stop. So wait, who did it cause difficulties for? Who's this group? Are you talking about like the successors of the TTSA? Like,
well, I'll tell you,
Bigelow crowd who's pushing this forward, or is this a planned disclosure that you're inferring, and David Grush sort of jumped ahead?
Yeah, the process underway is orchestrated. Now, I'm not saying that it's like a fully rehearsed play where everybody got together and they went through their parts and they'd everything know. You've got various parts of the government that kind of know where things are going and they're moving with it, right? So it's not strictly scripted, but they have a pretty good idea where they're going. And a subcommittee hearing in the House was not in the script. And the only reason that hearing happened is because Grush made a decision on his own to come forward. Mm-hmm. He wasn't sent out there as some ploy or anything else. He came forward on his own. And they knew that he was unhappy, and this was been in play for some time, but they didn't know that he would act ahead of, say, the intel hearing. So he comes forward, he drops the issue of bodies and technology. All right. So right away, this triggers, sets it up for a House hearing, a subcommittee House hearing. Well, they didn't want a committee hearing in the House. That was not the place. It wasn't the committee, and it was the wrong body of Congress. And so that created a problem in that sense. All right. It created a problem for Arrow big time. Why? Because Arrow was set up as the entity that's going to be the structure to deal with a post-disclosure world, and it needed a head guy. And so it was Sean Kirkpatrick, a perfectly fine guy, good man. All right. And so he's the head of Arrow. What's Arrow supposed to do? Nothing. Right. It's a Potemkin village. Arrow wasn't set up to finally get to the bottom of the ET issue. It was set up to exist. And so he's doing that job. There's probably some housekeeping, getting things set up. Wasn't getting much money because it had nothing to spend it on. Now, Grush comes forward and drops the issue of bodies and tech, and he asks who's the head of Arrow, Sean Kirkpatrick. So who is going to be asked questions about, well Mr. Kirkpatrick, you're the head of Arrow. Well, what about the bodies and tech? He can't talk about that. It's a huge problem for him. And as a result, he overreacted. I mean, he was in an impossible position, and he made the decision to go back at Grush with a letter that was somewhat nasty. Right?
Ill-advised.
And what he was expressing was, my God, you're not supposed to, it's the wrong act. You're in the wrong place, the wrong time. You're causing a lot of trouble. He should have just said nothing. but I understand his problem. Now, a lot of people jump on that and say, where Kirkpatrick is part of the big plan it's a whole, ruse, and he's trying to hold. No, right? And it's easy to think that way unless you're seeing enough of the perspective. That's what I was talking about by vantage point. Now, let me go a little bit further.
Well, I'm just going to jump in, and I want to hear Chris too, but sure. I think I am like 1,000% behind what David Grush did. I think what he did was literally heroic, and he jumped the script. And I was actually really glad, frankly, that he made Sean Kirkpatrick rather uncomfortable. We all listened to Dr. Kirkpatrick, speak previously to members of the Senate. Honestly, a whole lot of nothing. And
that's all he could do. I mean, that is.
I'm not blaming. I'm not saying he's a bad person, but there was nothing positive that came out of it. Grush jumps in and just nukes the whole process, which I think was incredible. I actually totally support it. It was brave. It was very brave of him.
It had pluses and minuses. In other words, one of the effects of Grush's action was to shut the back door off. For anybody that's thinking somehow we're going to slip out the back door on this and get away. No, it was over. It was done. Secondly, it kind of sped it up a little bit, put some pressure on the Senate. So in a sense, it's positive. But from the standpoint of the public relations process that was underway to sort of make everything look good and get forward, no, it really screwed that up. And there's another consequence here. Recently,
you're a lot more sympathetic to the United States government than I am. So I've
already declared that. So everybody understands that.
Chris wasn't here when we had this before, so just throwing that out there now.
It was recently announced that Kirkpatrick's going to step down. Am I surprised at that? No, I'm not.
No.
Why? Because he screwed up with the letter about Grush? No.
It became untenable.
Because he has had to have the awful, awful job of being the mayor of a Potemkin village as this thing is being put together to get to disclosure. And it's not been easy. And it's a bad deal for him. He looks bad. He's under criticism. He's doing nothing but catching arrows and spears. Mm-hmm. And so now that we're probably approaching the intel hearing and likely disclosure from the president, you need a new director. In other words, Sean leaves the stage. They give him a damn fine job somewhere. I hope he does. He deserves it. And then a new director who's not tainted with being the mayor of the Potemkin village comes in to run Arrow in the post-disclosure world. This is how I interpret this. I understand how people can look at exactly the same thing and say, that's not what's happening. But I feel really good about my interpretation. And if I didn't, I wouldn't.
All right. Mr. Chris Lehto, what do you think about this? There's a lot that Stephen had to say there. Backlog. Stephen and I have had discussions, debates, agreements, disagreements over everything related to disclosure for about a quarter of a century. I love the man like a brother, often argue with him like a brother too. So I've got my own take, but I would love to hear what you have to say about any of this, and really how far you think this process can go. And I have a whole bunch of other questions lining up, but I'm going to wait.
Yeah, it seems like the laws seem to really be pushing it. You know, the whistleblower accounts are really helping in the public discourse. You know, that seemed to wake a lot of people up before or after the hearing, because we had already heard everything, I guess, in the community, but it seems like once the hearing happened, that made it more publicized. So I guess I could agree with Stephen saying that it certainly messed with the public image of whatever PR plan they were trying to put out there, for sure. And you saw the PR plan. It was so obvious last year. You know, they were supposed to put out the report 31 October. I remember it was the October, it was Thanksgiving. It was Halloween that weekend. And I remember the report was going to come out. And before that weekend, I think Halloween was on Sunday or Monday. On Friday, they started this huge media campaign. It was in all the papers saying that, you know, they're not expecting much. It's mostly mundane. It's trash. I think one of the headlines was there's trash coming out. Before the report was supposed to come out, it was late many months, but so there was an obvious, you could just clearly see there's a public media campaign there to try and tone the level down in the water for 100%. Mm-hmm. So I think it's certainly messed with the actual public media campaign that they're trying to push this narrative, or it seems like in the mainstream news, it's often just mundane. It's often trash. And then Grush comes out and says, no, there's bodies, that really, really messes with their whole image. And
Totally.
and it made huge problems, like Stephen was saying, for Kirkpatrick, because Grush says basically under oath that he knows 30 plus people went and talked to Arrow with much of this information. He just threw Kirkpatrick under the bus, and I don't know how Kirkpatrick gets around that. Can they not prove? I mean, couldn't Grush just, if it's even worth the trouble, but prove that they never contacted them? I don't know. Aren't there email records or something?
There's nothing.
But I think Grush never contacted Kirkpatrick's office.
Well, I think, wasn't it? He said Kirkpatrick never contacted him, and Kirkpatrick said we tried like 4 or 5 times, and he never responded.
Yeah, right.
What else?
I don't know where did that just tail off, and no one ever resolved that.
I don't know. I mean, I think you can prove it in today's age. The NSA could prove a lot of things. We could probably prove if, Kirkpatrick wrote an email to David Grush. I don't think it's even worth it. I mean,
yeah.
But the point is, I think the laws are really what seems to be pushing the needle. Is the Disclosure Act? When the Whistleblower Act came out, that really pushed it this last year. And now Michael Herrera was saying that the next phase will be the new law, the 2024 NDAA. So I think the laws are really pushing it forward, and it seems like Grush is certainly helping with the public media front. It seems he's crushing their plan, or whatever plan is there. It seems like this is going against it.
If things had gone fast enough, they might have been able to get this done before David went public. Also, they didn't handle him well. All right, they misunderstood his willingness to take that chance. And remember, the driving force was he was getting threatened and harassed. And even though he went to the IG's office, and they probably took some measures that mitigated it, certainly on his end over the UAP task force. But let's face it, if you want to harass somebody, there's nothing to stop you. No IG's office can stop you. There's too many ways to do it anonymously, a lot of ways to threaten people. And ultimately, he had enough and he comes forward. But when I look at this thing, I'm looking for larger clues. In other words, this was going to be a messy process no matter what. Even without a Ukraine war, a pandemic, and a House of Representatives that's completely lost its mind, it was going to be a messy process. I'm looking for the big stuff. And let me give you a perfect example. And you talked about this earlier, Richard. So when 31 days after Grush comes forward, when out of nowhere, Chuck Schumer, who is not a formal member of the House Senate Intel Committee, but maybe because he's the Republican, the Democrat Senate Majority Leader, he may have a, quote, symbolic seat or be able to do whatever he wants. The point is, 39 days after Grush is when he comes out with the eminent domain language and actually refers to bodies in tech. He didn't have to do that. But by doing that, he basically confirms Grush. He confirms Grush, the Senate Majority Leader, all right? And then he talks eminent domain. Now, let's think about eminent domain for a second. You see, any technology that's in the hand of the government already, it's in government laboratories, it's over at Area 51, wherever the hell, you don't need eminent domain for that. Eminent domain doesn't apply to what we already have in the government. It applies to what is not in the government. And guess what's not in the government? It's the technology and other work being done by government contractors like Rand, like Lockheed Martin. And so when he put that out there, he sent a message to all of those government contractors doing all of that awful, awful stuff that we hear about and whatever, that just in case you forgot, that's ours. Okay, now that is a huge deal, right? The Senate Majority Leader just told the government contractors, whatever plans you have, it's ours. And let me tell you another reason why he did it. If disclosure were to happen on a Monday and you didn't have this law in place in the works, on Tuesday, a bunch of government contractors would come forward and say, oh, by the way, yeah. We got some of that tech. And by the way, we trademarked it. We got some patents filed. We got some big plans for that tech. Okay. But if disclosure happens, they could do that. Without disclosure, there's no way Lockheed Martin is going to come up and say, by the way, we have trademarked or patented some of that ET tech that supposedly doesn't exist. They can't do it. And so by making that move, he preempted them. Before they could take any public action, he's already told them, don't even bother to patent that tech or use it as you see fit. It belongs to the United States government. That is the kind of clue I'm interested in. And that kind of action is huge and tells me what I need to know.
Here's what someone needs to do
for disclosure.
Someone's got to figure out the total dollar value of all of that technology. I mean, you think about it.
A lot.
It's locked up, presumably. I mean, hey, most of us are now familiar with the Davis-Wilson notes and that whole firestorm that blew up in 2019. You look at that and you see a structure of secrecy in which basically the DoD served as a security for a private contractor, let's say Lockheed, presumably, for something that is of immense value, an intact flying saucer. So you multiply that across the contracting industry and ask yourself, what is the monetary value of the tech and of the science that's implied there, and who's going to control it? Who's going to monetize it? That's a story like I don't hear anyone really talking about this, but you've got to think behind the scenes. Schumer's got this provision put into the NDAA that could, I mean, in theory, unless I'm missing something here, remove trillions of dollars of profit potentially out of some private industry if the U.S. government so desired. Now, I can't see the U.S. government doing that because my opinion is they're totally controlled by those private entities, but still they could do it. And so this seems like a major power play behind the scenes potentially going on. And that's just one aspect. Like, I have got to think, we've gone through 80 years of this phenomenon where for nearly all of that time, there was hardly ever really a true threat of this subject coming out the way it could now. And now we're at a point where we're seeing, oh, there's some serious implications. There's the money. And there's one other thing I want to bring up now. No one likes to hear this. No one likes when I bring it up. I don't care. If I'm doing counterintelligence work on behalf of planet Earth, one thing I would definitely be asking is, are any of them infiltrating our society right now?
Sure.
It's an obvious question. And if they are, do they? And first of all, I have come across stories, I'm sure many other races, I'm sure people in the audience have come across stories directly that indicate, I'm just going to put it out there, human-looking entities. They don't seem like they're from around here, and they have an agenda. I have encountered several of these stories personally. If that's the case, then you've got the potential of an infiltration. And I'm not saying this is like invasion of the body snatchers, but potential infiltration. We have to ask, what is their agenda, and what are they doing? And I'm just going to ask Chris. I don't want to get too derailed from what we were just talking about because it's interesting, but you've been interviewing a number of very interesting folks. And I wonder if you have come across any indication of infiltration of any sort by them of us. Not that even has to be nefarious. There's a lot of different possible scenarios there, but has that ever come across your research, Chris?
Not really, to be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, I take that back. Herrera, he was talking about this when he got picked up at the airport. So he goes out to visit this guy at the black site. He gets picked up at the airport, and he says it was by actually one of these hybrids. So he said it's a hybrid. It's a person who has telepathic, I guess, advanced capabilities that can use alien technology. So if that's sort of advanced humans, I guess. That's what he is arguing, is you have advanced humans, and that could maybe go back to, maybe it's alien genes. You hear a lot about alien genes. So I don't know. I haven't heard anything about direct one-for-one swapping. It seems very suspicious to me that, I don't know. It seems like,
I want one of you to follow up.
Decisions, but
I just threw that out there because I keep looking at these very difficult issues that to me seem to just lurk right behind the wall of the cover-up. there's the money, there's the technology, there's the implications of the revolutionary science that undoubtedly is going to rock our world if we have a genuine disclosure. And there's the potential of infiltration. There's the potential of asking ourselves, who are these other beings and what are they doing? Is there an agenda? Do we know? How deep does the criminality go? Are we able to expose this? I mean, and Stephen is basically right in that this, like, it almost doesn't matter if we're ready or not for the truth. I always like to say, who's ready for your first child? No one. And you have it anyway. We're never ready for most of the things that life throws at us. And that will probably include disclosure. But I have to think, I can only imagine the stress levels that some of these people who have knowledge of this secrecy must be feeling right now, and what measures they must be thinking of taking in the event of a genuine ripping off the Band-Aid, and those of us actually getting some sense of what is true. I can't even imagine what some of these people are going through and the measures that they might be considering.
Who knows? The dilemma that they faced was this. And I was listing some of the tough questions that are going to happen post-disclosure. You just added a few more. That question will be asked. Are there any ETs amongst us? Answer could be yes. Okay. Where, what, who, and why? And they're going to have to deal with that. Here is their dilemma. This is a vast, huge thing. There's a lot going on. It has many parts. A lot of it is awkward. A lot of it is difficult. Whatever. Nothing new about that. Humans have been overcoming difficulty for thousands of years. But at the core of it is the presence of extraterrestrials. And that is self-evident. They're all over the place. And so ultimately, they have to confirm the extraterrestrial presence. Mm-hmm. And because of the amount of civilian research and so forth that has taken place and how much we've learned in the civilian sector in spite of the truth embargo, once that comes out, it all comes out. It's like popping a balloon. And say, I'm going to pop the balloon, but I'm just going to let out 1/3 of the air, and then I'll somehow seal it back up. No, it's all going to come out. So thus the public relations thing. Anything they can do to make it look like they're trying to do the right thing, any positive thing like that is going to make us a little more generous. Not everybody, but a lot more generous. And so if the answer to the question is, yes, there's extraterrestrials among us, and yes, we know it, people will be a little less irritated having gone through this process. But I think they understand that the jig is up and it's all going to come out eventually. And we're going to deal with it. And people say, well, my God, how are we going to deal with the fact that there's ET among us? And I'm saying, hey, you can deal with the fact that every couple of days, somebody in Russia threatens to use a tactical nuke in the Ukraine. If you can deal with that, you can deal with the fact there's ETs amongst us, right? Nuclear war is a far bigger threat than any aspect of this ET issue. Far bigger war. We have 25,000 nukes still, right? We have new hypersonic nukes. We got so many ways to deliver them, and that doesn't even get into the goddamn orbiting nukes. And so people are going, oh, there's going to be some secret thing with the ETs, and it's going to upset me. I'm saying, look, if you're not losing your mind over the damn nuclear issue, then chill out about the ET issue. It may turn out that you're going to love it. You're going to go, oh, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. And some of the programs, oh, they're all gone now. I don't know, but until we get disclosure, all we're going to do is guess ourselves to death. That's a good line. I like that line. I'm going to use that.
Fine. Write that one down. Use it. I already have an objection, but I'm holding back.
Hold back.
I love it too much. I'm just holding back. I want to ask Chris. You can either respond to that, or I think you mentioned earlier today, or maybe perhaps in one of the recent videos you did. You've spoken to a few people who had ideas about. If you can't get into this, don't get into it. But knowledge or hints about some kind of major outing of the secret over the next year or two. Am I right in thinking 2025 is what you were told?
Yeah, I have no backstage info, actually. I wish I did. No, all I've heard is 2027, the number from John Ramirez. And I've asked him.
Oh, Ramirez. Okay.
Behind the scenes trying to ask what was it from 2027? But no, just the positive news from Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon saying that there's definite movement coming next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to do a Chris Farley impression of with Lou Elizondo. You saw what these guns can do in the Middle East. I want to do that. I want Holyfield. I think it'd be a great skit. I don't think I can pull it off on my show, but it would look great with this little hat.
Well,
no, these seem very positive.
There's a lot of talk though about stuff going down in the next year or two. Yeah, I did recall hearing Lou and Chris Mellon discuss that. I did not hear the John Ramirez statement. I met John a couple of times, and I mean I like him personally, but I just don't really. I don't think he'd be offended because I told him this myself. I don't really know how to take some of his claims or his inside knowledge, and I'm the predictions. I don't really know what I think about that. But he predicted a 2027 full disclosure. Is that what you're?
No, he just said a big event will happen in 2027 on other podcasts, not on mine. He didn't say it to me.
Did you hear that?
He's implying open contact in 27. That's what he's referring to. And the time frame in terms of next year, January is next year. And as I pointed out, the legislation is going to be passed in December 21. Yeah. If that domain language is still in, that's a huge indicator, right? Because you don't leave that domain language in if you've got any real influence coming out of the private domain to private sector. So that's an indicator. Once that bill is passed, the infrastructure is done. Therefore, January of next year is ideal for the hearings in front of the Senate because, one, the legislation is done. The campaigns really haven't begun yet, so we can get this out of the way so that it will be part of the campaign and not hanging over it. And I like that. And then Ramirez is talking about 2027. Let's talk early 27. What's that? That's 24, 25, 26. It's about 2 years, right? 2.5 years. I have said for years that I have this very gut feeling, and it's just a gut feeling. It's kind of like you just take it all together, the whole thing, and you put it in a box, and you just kind of shake it, or one of those magic 8 balls, and it keeps coming up 2 years for me, meaning that is how long the human race needs to get up to speed in a post-disclosure world about the history of the truth embargo, the history of the presence, what they're up to, what they're doing, and all of as much as possible. And at that point, open contact is anticlimactic and doable. And there's a reason why open contact is needed and why it's likely to happen. I've felt this way for a long time. So Ramirez resonates with me in that regard because I believe he is referring to open contact. He's not the only one. There have been a number of contactees that have leaned in that direction, that open contact is coming, right? Now, open contact means it's happening in a very public way, in some form or fashion. We're being informed of what is being said, whether or not we see ETs or not. That's a big deal. That's the beginning of real, transparent, interstellar diplomacy. That's a big deal. I mean, it doesn't get bigger than that. I believe that has been the goal all along. And so these are the things, these are fitting into my scenario pretty well. So I'm comfortable with John. I'm comfortable with what Mellon is saying. I hope he's not referring to later in 2024, because I can tell Chris, who is a political guy, that if this damn thing, if Grush's statements are hanging over this entire campaign, which is going to be filled with bizarre stuff beyond anything any journalist has ever covered before, a presidential candidate with 90 charges against him, multiple indictments and everything else.
Stephen, we can't do this. You're going to do the whole Trump thing. Come on.
I'm not going to do the Trump thing. I'm simply saying that the campaign already is going to be off the charts. The idea that is going to hang over all of that as well is going to be nuts. It's going to create just a year of chaos, and we don't need that.
I keep thinking the election is just going to throw everything out of whack. Plus the fact that there are 2 wars right now that the U.S. is backing that are going to go completely wrong for the United States. There is no way Ukraine's going to go well for the U.S. None. Washington will not get what it wants, and they're not going to get what they want in Gaza either. So those are all disasters from a neocon empire point of view, let's just say, not going to go well. And then the election is just going to be like crazy time.
We can't control that. But one thing we can control is the timing of disclosure. We have that.
Right. So when do you think, I wanted to ask you, I mean, did I listen to you, but did you have a prediction? Do you have an idea as to when you think an actual official statement or a breakthrough? You said Senate hearings must be first and
Correct.
Then a disclosure. So
Words,
do you have an idea of a timeline for that?
No, well, again, what the president is not going to simply walk out and say, look, there's ETs here. No, there has got to be something that prepares for that. The Senate hearings and the testimony of 8 or 9 grushes, right, will certainly allow the president to do that. In other words, it's not the president coming forward saying, I'm going to pull disclosure out of the DOD. No, he's saying, look, you've seen it. I've seen it. It's very non-political. It's very safe. It's appropriate.
Do you think he'll do that? Like let's say there's a hearing, because it looks like it's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, I don't know when it's going to happen. Does anyone know when it's going to happen? Is there going to be a hearing?
No, it happens when Mark Warner and Marco Rubio want it to happen. In other words, there is nobody in the United States government that can stop those 2 gentlemen from calling that hearing. Not the president, not the Supreme Court, right. Nobody. They have that power and that power alone. And so if they call the hearings and we get the testimony we expect, it will be so powerful. It will be Grush times 10. Could be. The president is then the president can't come out now and say, oh, I listened to Grush testify before the subcommittee of the House, and boy, I think that confirms. No, we have to have the Intel Committee. There's a reason the Intel Committee's been driving this from the beginning. You think that's an accident, right? That they're the one committee and all of the legislation is being put forward by those people? No, because it is the most powerful committee in the Congress. It is the most appropriate in terms of national security. It also happens to be a Democratic controlled committee, and he's a Democratic president. So this is a nonpartisan act. Right. And so logically, I have no inside information. Logically, you have the hearings after the legislation is done and the infrastructure is in place. And if you have those hearings, it won't take long before the world is going to be on fire, expecting something from somebody. And if the president is wise, we won't have this unbelievable hearing and the world's on fire. And he'll just sit there, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. And then Xi Jinping's come forward and says, yeah, I've been watching the hearings in the United States, and there is extraterrestrials here, and we have proof, and the legacy goes to China. That's what I'm talking about. It's not about, do I know the timing? I know the powerful logic why, God damn it, they had better get it done now. That's what I'm projecting. The logic and power of why it has to be done now, not some inside knowledge that I know it's going to happen now.
But I mean, it's a reasonable thing to think they may do it this year. I mean, I don't think it's impossible. Do you know about this, Chris? Do you know if there's a likelihood of the Senate or Congress convening another hearing on this? There's all of these below the level rumblings.
Well, Gillibrand said they were going to have another hearing. She's already said that.
Yeah. So, do we know when?
No,
do you know when? Chris, anyone? Do any of us know?
No.
We're guessing.
Heard nothing. I ask everyone. All I've heard about is February based on the law.
So, if it happens, and let's say it's powerful, let's say it is David Grush times 10.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the word is there's some very powerful people lining up. I don't know who they are, but let's just say that happens.
I know some of them. The nuclear witnesses are right there.
Yeah, okay.
You're going to have 4 or 5 witnesses testifying to the nuclear weapons shutdown. Now, that's never happened before. They've been trying to get in front of a hearing for 25 years.
Are these the people who work with Bob Salas and who did the
Robert
press
Salas and the others? And how many? There are a lot of witnesses to those events we don't even know about. Several of the commanders have died because of their age, but but they were down in the silos, so they were present and they know what happened. But they were in the silos.
Okay.
But the security guys, the younger men up top that actually saw the craft hovering over the ICBM bases, they're much alive. But because they were just not officers and they had families and they were young, they just kept their mouths shut. They may be coming forward. You may have 4 or 5 of them. Firsthand testimony. The damn thing was over the base,
Hopefully there are some others as well, because I mean, in the field, we've all heard about the 1967 case. It's important. I'm not saying that it isn't, but I would personally love to hear something new. Someone like David Grush was new and he was powerful. Anyway, my point is, this comes out in, let's say, February, and let's say it's strong. I do wonder. I mean, I've never, ever thought that there would be a presidential disclosure moment. But if there's a powerful Senate hearing that has a bunch of witnesses, and if it catches fire in the media, I do wonder, like, what would be said? I don't really know. I don't really know. I just think there's so much to lose by the folks who've been hanging on to this secret for so long. I don't see it happening. I do not see President Joe Biden making a disclosure statement. I just don't. I would like to be wrong, but I don't see it.
I can't imagine what else he could do. I mean, you just look. Here's another tip off, right? The legislation this time around. Remember, eminent domain is not the only thing in that act.
Yeah,
a lot of people are not paying attention to this. The act calls for the setting up of a 9-person board in the White House, appointed by the president with the assistance of certain advisors. And this 9-person panel is part of the what we'll call information transfer process, which I mentioned before, where stuff from the deepest levels of the secret empire works its way up, gets past a certain, scrutiny here, and then at some point has got to get its way to the National Archives. That act is basically saying everything that we've got eventually is ending up in the archives. It goes even further that everything prior to 25 years ago is a fast track to the archives. And they set up a 9-person panel in the White House. That involves the president directly. Okay. And so now you're going to have a president that's heard amazing testimony that clearly indicates a non-human presence. There's already a panel set up in the White House to process the information. And the president is going to sit there and go, well, I guess nothing for me to do. I'll just wait and see how it turns out. When the biggest political legacy of all time is sitting there in the palm of his hand, I'll give you 50-1 odds after that hearing on a buck. I can afford the 50. That the president follows up that hearing with a disclosure in the East Room of the White House.
All right, look, am I going to bring this up? 20 years ago, you and I had this exact same conversation, except the president's name was George W. Bush. And I was like, I don't know what you're smoking, but I want that because I want that optimism. Like you were saying to me that it was going to happen because of his legacy. So, yes, there's always the question about the legacy, but will that be the factor? And I just don't know. I mean, presidents can be threatened. I'm buddies with Catherine Austin Fitz, who's one of my favorite people in the world. Number 2 at HUD under George Bush Sr. She's a genius, financial whiz. And one thing Catherine always said is, you get high enough in the government and they get a control file on you. They find out every little thing you've ever done and they get it over you and they control you. And who's to say that presidents are immune to that? They're probably the most controlled of all. I mean, I don't really know who's running the White House, but it's not Joe Biden. So maybe he'll have a handler who'll say, yes, this is what you're going to say, Mr. President, but I don't know.
I don't. That's not an area. I don't go there because I don't see how it can help, at least in terms of my thinking on this. But look, this was never going to be easy. I mean, ending the truth embargo was never going to be easy. Brutal, no question. The longer it went on, the harder it was going to get. And a perfect example of this is the situation with Clinton. After the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union was dismantled, the Communist Party was outlawed, and Yeltsin, unfortunately, was an alcoholic, was coming on in, and Gorbachev was still running the show. Things could go any way, but people were really happy. The Berlin Wall came down. Everybody's partying in Berlin, and it's all looking great. It looked like a good opportunity to end this damn embargo, which is basically a national security matter. Couched within the problem of the nuclear threat. And so Rockefeller goes to Clinton and says, look, let's do it. But here was the problem. If it was only that easy, because basically what Rockefeller was saying to Bill Clinton in so many words was, look, you're the president. Go get the files from the DOD. In other words, go get them. If they get the files from the DOD and those come out public, that'll pretty much end the ball game. And so what was he asking Clinton to do? Without any basic prep, without any lead up, use the power of the president to literally browbeat the Department of Defense into giving up the files with no prep, no structure, no laws, no nothing. And it didn't help that the DOD utterly despised Bill Clinton. And so what Rockefeller was asking was utterly impossible. I'm glad he did it, because that Rockefeller initiative ended up being an activist tool. We were able to use that to generate news and to generate connection between the issue and the president. So it was useful to the activists, but he had no chance of ending the embargo under that circumstance. And that was all the way back in 1990. It's now 1993. It's 30 years later. 30 more years had to go by. And Mellon and Elizondo and Steve Justice and the other guys had to come forward, and the New York Times had to write the articles. And so much more has taken place and unfolded, huge amount behind the scenes. Legislation has been passed. That is commensurate with the importance and the size of the issue. That is what is needed to do something of this magnitude. It took them this long to finally do it. They have done it, and they didn't do it to suddenly say, okay, that's good. That's good for now. Let's go another 30 years. We'll get back to you with some new laws. They have taken the cork off the champagne. You've got hundreds of millions of people around the world right now waiting for the next move. And when you have a situation like that, the benefits, the glory, the political capital you will get from it far exceeds whatever BS or problems you're going to get from some inside contractor jackass that may have has a file on you.
All right.
And
Well, let us see if the president of the United States will do that. I want to ask Chris a question. This is actually from the chat, and it's a good one. It's from our stalwart member, Linda Thompson. And she says, Chris, I think she's curious. Linda knows her stuff. She says, Chris, what is your perspective about this with your fresh view on things? That's throwing it right out there to you. I don't know how long you've been, like, I don't know, were you doing the UFO subject many years ago, or you just got it? So it's interesting. Yeah. What are your thoughts on all of this? I mean, a couple of years ago, we didn't know who you were. And now you've got over 100,000 followers on your YouTube channel, and you are making things happen. What is your perspective, like, having jumped into this field just in general, and what do you think? What are your thoughts about being in this crazy world?
Yeah, I mean, before 2021, really, I didn't think about UFOs at all. I mean, never really considered them. At zero. I had the standard science view, the standard mainstream view. It's too far away. SETI's been looking, for so many years, and they haven't seen anything, and you can't travel faster than light. And I didn't know anyone. I had no close experience or friends or anything, or family. So I honestly just never thought about it. And then swapped over, going on almost a little over almost 3 years now, into UFOs, so 2.5 years. So I can't say I'm really that fresh anymore. But I guess I would say for the political things is they seem very conservative. I kind of have to agree with Richard. I can't imagine the President Biden coming out in the election year and saying it. I think they'll do everything they can to delay it, so unless they're forced. And then on the other view, on the overall view is, I think of it as a systems approach. I kind of mentioned that before, that we're part of larger systems. And if the system keeps going, right, then you're considering there is a hierarchical structure that links our planet to other planets. So we would be like a colony planet, but unknown. Most of the population would be unknown to the fact that we are some sort of colony planet. And that would mean you're led by some sort of, higher uppers, alien or human. So I generally think that would be what we should be looking for, as a higher structure.
In other words, on the assumption that we're probably not running our own destiny.
Yes.
That's what you might be wondering. Yeah. Is that what you think?
Yeah, basically. I think
we're probably,
it's very questionable, suspicious either way.
I correspond with a number of very smart people. And one gentleman, I know he's in there right now, and he knows I'm thinking of him. And this is his opinion, that we are either a colony or becoming one, fast becoming one. And it really is worth asking, like, who's running the show. And there's a bit of speculation. Steve doesn't want to go down that road. I understand that, but I keep wondering the same thing that you're asking. Like, Charles Fort 100 years ago said, "Yep, we are property," and that was his conclusion. We are property. So I don't know. I have a couple of other questions. Someone actually asked a question. This is to me, but this could be to anyone. So Ian says, Richard, to what extent do you think Mockingbird is still active? The lack of mainstream Grush coverage suggests to me that the media is compromised. I'm just going to say, and I would love to know what you guys think. I absolutely think, we just lost Chris. Hopefully he comes back. I think we live in a very controlled major media system. Mockingbird, of course, for those who don't know, was a well-known and confirmed CIA media manipulation program that went through the Cold War, through the 1970s, exposed by Carl Bernstein of Watergate fame. And the CIA then later said, well, we don't engage in such relationships as paying journalists covertly to work for us. But of course, you've got journalists in the media who are jumping over each other to work with CIA and military intelligence and all of that. I mean, that is our system. And when we saw Grush getting smeared, just shamelessly smeared, in the aftermath of his testimony, I thought, yep, the system's in place. So I think that the major media is reflective of the battle going on within the national security apparatus right now over this. I think we're looking at a factional war, and I think the insurgency that Steve's been talking about is making tremendous strides and could actually make a breakthrough. I mean, it's totally possible, but there is a tremendous amount of fight on the other side, and some of that I think is reflected through the media. Hopefully, we'll get Chris back. Do you think much about Steve? You cover the media all the time. Do you get into that at all? The whole Operation Mockingbird area.
Past is not prologue. Look, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but no one is tracking the media on this issue more than me in the world. Okay. So if you go to my Paradigm Research Group website under Resources, Print Media Archive, there's several hundred articles about Grush. And guess what? 90+% of them are all positive. Only a few articles are, trying to undermine him or scapegoat him a little bit. No, 90% is positive. And they pretty much cover
Grush. That's good. That's a good.
No, I'm telling you, I know what the media is covering, and it's not that. They're covering it all. They're covering it very well. Grush was covered thoroughly. And when Patrick wrote a letter that was attacking Grush, that was covered. Did the government line up behind Patrick? No. And when his medical records were partially released, they covered that. Did they make a big deal out of that? No. Right? There was pushback against that. The fact that was done, that was also covered. The media is basically on our side now. It's been our side for some time. Why? Because I read it all. All right. For those that don't read it all, I could understand why they might not have quite figured that out yet. Now, are they doing everything they could do? No. But my God, the Washington Post and the New York Times have written more articles in the subject the last 2 years than the previous 15. I mean, come on, New Yorker.
Been any good? I mean, the Washington Post, please. Yeah. They're the worst.
It's the political paper of the United States. It's kind of important.
Okay? Yeah, no, I'm not saying they're not important, but okay. I certainly remember, decade after decade of the Washington Post, banal, horrific, terrible cover. We did the X conferences, and their coverage of that was beyond terrible. It was
the worst paper in the United States, a large paper, is the Los Angeles Times. I mean, their record is so abysmal, it's a joke, and they'll have to answer for that. But in fact, if you go through my print media archive, you will see many, many articles from the New York Times, the Washington Post about this issue. And guess what?
I mean, but you're saying like they're decent quality. I'm going to admit,
I'm saying that they're legitimate articles, and they're not debunking. Look, there was one famous piece way back in 2010 by John Miller, who was working for the Metro section. They sent him down to cover the press conference. It was put on by Bob Salas and Robert Hastings, and he wrote a comic piece. It was a joke. Yeah. And of course, I use that to beat him over the head all the time. For every one of those, there's 15 legitimate articles. All right, here's the problem, Richard. Once you demonize everything, the media, the medical system, the politicians, the national security state, once everything is demonized.
I do like demonizing.
Where do you go next? How do you advance? Okay. In other words, you're basically telling every good person in every institution in the country, I'm so sorry, but the whole thing is demonized.
One of the members in the chat, Clifford Roboto, just says, I saw a New York Times hit piece on Grush, okay, editorial, right after he first showed up. Boom. It's all coming out. Like, I have the only positive New York Times coverage that I have seen in the last few years was by Leslie Kane and Ralph Blumenthal. I don't know that any other positive thing came out of the New York Times. Once they stopped doing art, their last one was in July of 2020. I don't think the New York Times has done anything that's been noteworthy on this subject. I mean maybe I'm missing something.
I mean, what's noteworthy? If it's legitimate coverage and it's truthful and it's about the issue, that's significant. There was a time when there was virtually no coverage. Again, the links are all there. Anybody can go to Print Media Archive under resources, paradigmresearchgroup.org, read the articles.
Steve's got it's the best website for all the media. It's true.
And there's a Washington Times, plenty of good articles there. The New York Times has come around. They're a little better, right? The Los Angeles Times is awful. It's beyond belief. Chicago Tribune, it's almost as if they live in caves there. But I think they're deferring. This is an issue so huge that it's kind of like, hey, let the New York Times and the Washington Post handle it. The Los Angeles Times is about the film industry and stuff in Hollywood or whatever.
Say this,
I don't know.
By the way, I hope we get Chris back, but I'm just going to say this. The coverage has, as always, it basically mirrors and parrots and kisses the butt of the entire national security apparatus, which, by the way, why do they have to dominate the issue relating to UAP at all? I'm going to get into that tomorrow. But what I will say is, you got the media that completely kisses their butt and follows the exact narrative that comes out of the Pentagon, which is, well, this is something we're going to look into and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And I just keep thinking none of that is true. We have had 80 years of intense military activity going on with this. Anyone who studied this a little bit knows it. This has been dramatic. I can understand why they want to lie about it, but the fact is the media's job is not to carry water for the national security state. The media's job is to be honest, and they haven't done that.
Then how do you explain the dozens of articles, Richard?
Because no one's talking about an actual cover-up. Or is anyone really talking about military complicity and lies for 80 years? I'm not seeing anything like that.
This gets into what I was saying earlier.
No one's doing that.
The media for some time now has been covering what's happening in the field, and they've been covering it as real journalism. For instance, when Grush came forward, they covered what he said. They covered statements that he made. They did not attack him. If there was an editorial piece that did, fine, that's what editorials are for, all right? But in terms of the coverage, whether it was New York Times or Washington Times, Daily Caller, Washington Post, whether it was Salon Magazine, whether it was Slate Magazine, these were all straight articles.
Straight up, there's no analysis. There's no attempt to get to the truth. There's no investigative. You were talking earlier, investigative journalism. They're not doing it.
That's where they draw the line, Rich. I've said that. I've said that the way the media has dealt with this is we will cover it, but we will not investigate it. We will not go Woodward and Bernstein on it, okay, which is what brought down President Nixon. If the Washington Post had made the decision, we're just going to cover what's happening. If one gets arrested, we'll cover that. If there's a trial, we'll cover that. But we're not sending Woodward and Bernstein out to knock on the doors of people that belong to creep and actually get to the root of the thing and bring down the president.
Which is the only thing that's needed, because otherwise, if you're just going to take the word of what comes out of the Pentagon, like, why bother? Why bother? Those people are never honest. I'm sorry. You warned me against the dangers of demonizing them, but I'm going to demonize them. That is an institution that does not operate in good faith, I don't believe, and that is just never been honest. Not even just about UFOs. They've never been honest about that. They're not honest about anything. And so why should I support a media that basically does nothing other than become a stenographer for the spokespersons out of the Pentagon? That's really, to me, that's all that they're doing.
Well, first and foremost, the object of news.
It's not for you to defend them, by the way. I'm just throwing this out.
No.
Who else am I going to yell at? I got no one else to yell at here.
The first job of news is to be a stenographer. You cover the news. Something happens. A bank got robbed.
Not the last.
That's their first job. The second job, the next level, is investigation. Right? Journalism can take that role. It's not legal investigation. It's journalistic investigation, and our Constitution gives them the latitude to do this. It is an important component of our democracy. The fact that journalists can go and dig and find out things that are not going to be just generally published or come out in the general public arena provides some protection to our democracies and can avoid abuses of power. In a lot of countries, journalists that do this get murdered. A lot of people have no idea how many journalists are getting killed every year. It's a big number. All right. In the US, it's not so many. Okay. Now, we know that there have been many, many powerful journalistic investigations in this country that have brought down presidents, have caused billions of dollars to be lost by the Catholic Church, and on and on and on. On this issue, they made a decision early on that they would not go there. Yeah. And this decision goes all the way back to the 40s and 50s and became institutionalized. Now, history can argue forever whether the publishers of the newspapers, in making the decision that the ET issue was so big, so huge, and so much of so problematic in lieu of the developing Cold War and nuclear arms race, the Soviet Union, that they still should have bucked the system and gone after the issue and brought it out. We could debate that until the end of time, but that's what they did. This wasn't evil. This was a calculated decision. In other words, you can't assess and judge the last 70 years as if the nuclear arms race didn't exist, right? That we aren't the threat of total annihilation at any time.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. I mean, you go back to 1947, you put yourself in the position of President Harry Truman. I've wondered about this many times. Mm-hmm. And, you're confronted with this utterly awesome reality. And do you tell the world? I mean, there's a part of you probably that would want to, but there's a big part of you, probably backed by many advisors, that would say, bad idea. And there's a lot of reasons why you could see, at least at that time, bad idea. The problem, as we all know, is that the secrecy developed. It's like a poison pill. Like it sits inside the system. And eventually, how do you get rid of this? How do you eliminate the secrecy? The longer it goes, the more corruption that it engenders among all parts of our society. And it just becomes, and there's more and more complicity along the way. And so too many people now, they got to, cover their butts, and it becomes, now it's a real problem. It's been going for an entire lifetime.
But I think it's also appropriate to consider that the rise of the military intelligence complex and the vast amount of secrecy and even the abuse of secrecy did not happen in a vacuum. It wasn't like, we didn't need any of that, or it was no big deal, but let's just do it for the hell of it. No. Post World War II, the United States initially was faced with two unbelievably significant, monumental issues that no nation had ever faced in the history of the human race. One, there's an extraterrestrial presence confirmed to them no later than July of 1947. We're not alone in the universe. Sure. There's technology superior to us. We have a crash vehicle and some of the dead bodies, and they're stinking to high heaven. And at the same time, they had confirmation by 47 July that the Soviets had the atom bomb secrets, the hydrogen bomb secrets, and they were on the verge of testing the atom bomb, and they would test the hydrogen bomb. And it was already pretty clear that they hated our guts and we hated theirs. Mm-hmm. That's what they were facing. And the decision they made at the time was not, we're going to have to just suppress this whole ET thing for at least 3/4 of a century. No. The decision was, we have to sit on this and see where things are going. It could be in 4 or 5 years, it'll all blow over, right?
Oh no, yeah, totally. I
will have a heart attack, and the new guy will want to make peace.
Yeah.
But it didn't. It just got worse and worse and worse. And so as you move from 47 to 1985, when at the peak we had 86,000 nuclear weapons in the hands of 9 countries, right? The idea that the ability to let this out, to get this extraordinary information out, was going to get easier? No. Plus, we had more wars during that time, and so it was just one hell of a century. And so again, I can't just dismiss the history of it and lay it down on evil cabals or malintent on this group or that group.
No, I guess I don't want to. I don't want to overstate that my position on that. What I guess I see, it's too bad Chris isn't here, because he was talking about kind of institutional logic or system logic, and that's kind of where my mind goes. By the way, so I'm not saying these people are all evil. Some of them probably are, but I don't think that's the point. I think it's their institutional problems and obstacles in place against this. And I mean, to me, the end result is that what comes out of the Pentagon is just not to be believed or trusted or seen as credible on a whole array of issues. But we should, by the way, for those listening, it's been too long since you and I, Stephen, have talked privately. This is how we actually.
Yeah, this is how we actually talk privately. Yeah, that's right.
This is our norm.
We almost had a chance to do this at the New School in New York. It was all a guy there I know, and it had been the first time you and I could have this kind of discussion in front of a very high-end academic audience. I knew it was going to kill.
And then we both dish it out. Let's just
the New School found out what the topic was and said, I don't think so. Right. Yeah. But one day
we could do it.
Being on a stage at an auditorium at Harvard University with one of those real comfortable chairs,
I want the nice chairs.
Little table, right? And we're going to be sitting there, and everybody's going to be sitting on the edge of the seat. You and I are going to have one of these wonderful discussions back and forth, and it's going to be pure joy for me, okay? Because let me tell you something. Of all the universities in this country I have a beef with over this issue, it's Harvard.
Harvard. Hell yes. They went after John Mack. You don't get forgiven for them.
The number one university has got a lot to answer for.
They sure do. All right. Well, look, we're going to have to end this now. My lovely wife, Tracy, and I are doing a VIP session in 30 minutes. We're going to have a quick little meal. I guess we'll say goodbye to Chris Lehto. I think Chris was wonderful.
I just came back, guys. Sorry. I don't know what happened. The last 10 minutes, you could see me. I got really hot and just got nauseous and went and just kind of threw up.
I'll take the blame. It's my fault.
Oh, that is.
Yeah, I think when Steve was talking about Trump, I think he mentioned Trump, and that's right when I got nauseous.
Uh-oh. Look, I want to say one thing before you go, Chris. Look. One of the reasons the disclosure is advancing is over the last couple of years, hundreds, if not thousands, of Chris Lehtos have turned up, jumping in, millennials, whatever, opening up podcasts, doing research, getting online. That's helping to feed the system and feed the process. And so you are part of the solution, man. And we know that there's more Lehtos coming, and we welcome you to the party. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Thanks so much. That means a lot, really, coming from both you guys. So no, I appreciate it. Sorry, I had to run off. I don't know, pushing too hard, Chris, but
it's fine.
I don't think I'm sick. I think I'll be fine tomorrow. Just a little beaten down, maybe.
I know the feeling. And by the way, yes, I'm a little under the weather as well, so I feel your pain. And by the way, Chris, I'm going to reach out to you privately. I've got some research elements that I want to share with you. We'll talk about that later.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, Richard.
Stephen,
until tomorrow, my friend.
You are a gentleman and a scholar and a friend. It's always a pleasure. I'm glad we got to have this panel. We made it work. We had some technical issues. We got it all working.
And by the way, I have a lot more books than you have. I've written more books than you have, but I have more books than you have.
Looking pretty good there. Do you know? So do we know when Stephen's VIP session is? I'm just going to
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock Eastern. Okay.
Right.
So everyone, please, I'm sure our moderators and folks will put links down, but for anyone who wants to sign up for the VIP sessions, I'm sure Michael and Lori will put that out there. So it's been wonderful. Tracy and I will be back, I guess maybe with a fresh link. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we will be back for our VIP session in about 30 minutes. So Stephen, you have a great evening. Thank you so much. You really were just such a great addition. And your lecture was
and no more of the legend stuff, please. No legend. Forget the legend.
Take the legend away.
Yeah, I don't want that. Forget it. Later.
If I survive you, I'm going all legend on you.
Yeah, after I'm dead, you can legend me all you want, but until then, I'm up and coming whippersnapper.
Hey, one of them young up and comers. You and Lehto. Okay. Well, everyone, bye for now. We will be back anon later.